All right, so get ready because today we're going deep into decision making.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, how we choose things
Wait.
all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from what cereal to eat to,
Big life decision.
exactly, the big
Yeah.
stuff. And we've got this chapter from a book
Okay.
all about how brains and behavior evolve. So
Interesting.
at the end, I think you'll have a new appreciation for just how much goes into making even the smallest choices.
I think a lot of people think of decision making as really simple, but
Yeah, you just do it.
you just do it, but it's really not.
It's way more complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Like a simple organism,
Okay.
something like a lamprey,
Mm-hmm.
it sees a shadow,
Mm-hmm.
its brain basically goes danger, and it just darts away.
Yeah.
But for us, mammals,
Mm-hmm.
with our evolved forebrains,
Right.
things get a lot more complex.
Way more. I mean, that evolution of the forebrain, especially the cortex and hippocampus,
Right.
lets us go beyond just those like hardwired responses. It's not just reaction.
Yeah, it's not just reacting.
Yes.
We interpret things.
Yeah.
Take that shadow, for example.
Okay.
We don't just see darkness. We see an object. We understand where it is compared to us. We might even imagine what's behind it.
It's like a whole other level
Probably.
of processing, turning that sensory data into something we can actually understand.
Exactly.
It's not just see shadow run. It's more like see shadow. How dangerous is this? How do I get out of here? Should I grab something in case there's something behind it?
And that's important. Perception isn't passive.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's shaped by our goals, our knowledge, our experiences.
So we don't just see the world as it is.
No.
We see it as we understand it.
Exactly.
So our brains are filtering information and interpreting it based on what matters to us.
Yeah.
Like think about seeing a friend
Yep.
in a crowd.
Right.
You're not just matching facial features.
No way.
It's all the memories and emotions and everything you know about that person.
It all comes together.
Yeah, and that's where affordances come in.
Affordance is okay.
Yeah, so we see objects not just as, whatever they are, but as what we can do with them.
Interesting.
And that's based on our experience.
So like a hammer.
Yeah, like a hammer, you know what to do with it.
To grab it, hit something with it.
Right, and your brain's already prepped for that.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
So our brains are like pre-programming us to act before we even realize it.
In a way, yeah.
But if it's all about our past experiences, what about things we've never seen before?
Well, that's where the hippocampus comes in.
Oh, the hippocampus. Okay.
Oh, and the memory weaver.
It's weaving together what we see now and what we remember.
That's right, to understand the whole situation.
So it's constantly checking our past to make sense of the present.
Exactly, and the structure's really unique.
What do you mean?
Well, it's got all these neurons that are sparsely connected and form these, assemblies.
Oh, wait.
Each one encoding a specific experience.
So it's not just remembering stuff.
Yeah.
It's making stories out of them.
Exactly, and those stories let us understand not just what things are, but how they relate to each other.
Like, if this happens.
Then this will happen.
Yeah.
And that brings us to a big question.
Okay, what's that?
How does our brain choose what to remember?
We can't possibly remember everything.
No way. Our brains would explode.
Right?
So what makes some things stick?
Good question. So what is it?
Well, it's those chemical messengers,
What are they called?
neuromodulators.
Okay. They help us focus on what's important.
And one of the most important is...
Is it dopamine?
You got it.
Dopamine.
Dopamine's like a spotlight, highlighting things that are important.
So when something good happens, dopamine's like, hey, remember this.
That's it.
So it's not just about feeling good. It's
What?
about learning.
Right, but dopamine's not the whole story.
Okay.
What about our basic needs?
Like hunger.
Hunger, thirst, all that.
Yeah.
They're sending signals to our brains all the time.
Shaping our goals.
Yeah, our priorities.
That makes sense.
And that's where the hypothalamus comes in.
Oh, another brain area.
It's the bridge between our body and our brain,
So it's like our internal sensor.
making sure everything's running smoothly.
But how does that affect decisions?
Well, when it finds something off, like you're getting dehydrated,
Okay.
it triggers a bunch of responses to fix it.
Interesting.
And those signals are powerful. They change how we see things, think about things, even how we act.
So it's not just what we want to do.
Nope.
It's what our body needs us to do.
You got think about being super hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Food becomes everything.
You can't think of anything else.
Right. And your decisions are all about food.
It's your body saying, hey, I need fuel.
Exactly.
Wow, our basic needs can hijack our decisions.
They can?
It's like survival instinct kicking in.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just the basics, right?
You're right. Our needs and desires are way more complicated than just hunger or thirst.
So we've got perception, Memory, motivation, all playing a part.
All working together.
But how does our brain choose what to do?
Yeah,
It's a lot to handle.
it is.
Is there like a main control center making the decisions?
Not a single control center, but there's an area that plays a big role.
Oh, okay.
It's called the basal ganglia,
Basal ganglia.
and it's like the neural judge.
A neural judge. Interesting.
It filters those competing desires and impulses, figures out which one wins.
I'm definitely ready to hear more about this neural judge.
All right, well, let's get into that. It's really a fascinating system.
So tell me, how does this choosing process work?
Well, think of it like a filter.
A filter. Okay.
Yeah, a gatekeeper between different parts of the brain.
So like between the cortex coming up with plans
Exactly.
and the motor systems that make us move.
You got it.
So the basal ganglia sits in the middle,
Right in between.
deciding which plans actually get us moving.
It's not just passing along information.
It's making choices.
Yeah, actively.
So how is there like a points system?
Not exactly points, but it considers a few things.
Okay, like
First, how strong the signal is from the cortex.
like how badly does the cortex want to do something?
Exactly. A strong signal means, hey, pay attention to this.
Got it.
But it also looks at our motivation.
You mean those signals from the hypothalamus?
Yeah, those are important here.
So if I'm starving, that's going to affect my choices.
Absolutely. Actions that match our needs get a boost.
Makes sense.
And there's another factor. Feedback.
Feedback, you mean from past actions
Exactly. It keeps track of what worked before.
and what didn't.
Right, like a scorecard of successes and failures.
So it's not just about what we want now.
Nope.
It's also about what worked in similar situations
You got it. Constantly combining information about what's valuable.
based on our needs and experience.
Right. It's always adapting.
So we're always refining our choices.
Based on new information. Yeah, and this goes back to reinforcement learning.
Oh, right.
Every action gives our brain feedback.
And that shapes future decisions.
Exactly. It's a cycle.
Action, feedback, adapt.
And the key player in all this is
Dopamine.
dopamine. There it is.
I knew it.
It's not just for memory.
Right. It's the brain's reward signal.
It tells us what's good, what to do again.
So more dopamine means we really want to do something again.
It's a strong reinforcement, yeah.
But it's not just about pleasure, right?
You're right. It also signals unexpected rewards.
So if something good happens that we didn't expect,
Dopamine says, hey, figure out how you did that.
so we can do it again.
Exactly. It helps us learn.
This is amazing. Our brains are like little scientists,
Always experimenting.
seeing what works.
Trying new things. But there's one thing I'm still wondering about.
Okay, what's that?
Where does conscious choice fit in?
Yeah, with all these brain areas and chemicals.
Where do we actually decide? That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
We don't have all the answers yet.
But surely we're not just robots.
Well, the chapter suggests our awareness might not start the action,
Interesting.
but it can definitely influence it.
So even if we're not aware of everything happening,
Our conscious minds can still play a role.
so we're not just along for the ride.
Right, we have some control.
The book really emphasizes that.
That we have a capacity for conscious control.
So even if my brain's pushing me one way,
You can still say no.
we have that veto power.
Exactly, and that's what separates us from animals that just act on instinct.
It's not just reacting, it's shaping our reactions.
That makes me think about habits,
Oh yeah, like automatic processes.
but we can break them.
We can choose to change.
That's a key point.
Our ability to think about our actions, decide what's important, and choose what aligns with our goals.
That's what gives us real power to change.
And that's where free will gets really interesting.
It does, but there's still that question.
If everything's shaped by our past, our genes,
All the unconscious stuff.
are we really responsible?
It's like a classic debate.
Nature versus nurture, fate versus free will.
And there's no easy answer.
The book doesn't pretend to have one either.
No, it's about recognizing how complicated it is.
So it's not just yes or no.
It's more like a spectrum.
How much is conscious choice? How much is everything else?
Our choices interact with all those factors.
Biology, environment.
Everything.
So we're not puppets, but we're not completely free either.
It's somewhere in between.
That interplay is what makes us unique.
It really is. We're constantly evolving.
Shaped by everything.
Nature, nurture, all of it.
So even without total free will, we still have some agency.
Definitely. We can still make choices that matter.
That's actually really empowering.
It is. We might not control everything.
But we can take responsibility for what we do control.
Exactly. And that makes a difference.
It makes me think about how we learn and grow.
Mm-hmm.
We can't change the past.
But we can learn from it.
Use our experiences to make better decisions.
That's the key. Every decision is a chance to learn. To adapt.
And to grow.
And that's why human behavior is so fascinating.
I completely agree.
This whole deep dive has been amazing.
It has. We've learned so much.
From neurons to the hypothalamus to dopamine.
It's incredible how much goes on in our brains.
Even for a simple decision, it's a whole network of brain areas, chemicals, memories.
Like a universe inside our heads.
And even though we may never understand it all,
or solve the mystery of free will,
the journey is what matters.
It really is, and that's what makes it so exciting.
I think that's a good point to leave our listeners on.
Yeah.
That sense of wonder.
About the power of our minds.
Exactly.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. It's the final part of our look at decisions.
Okay.
And how we make them. We've uncovered a lot already.
Yeah.
So many layers.
Yeah.
But now we're getting to the big one. Free will? Do we have it?
Oh, the big question.
It is. Is it real? Or is it all an illusion?
Well, we might not solve that today.
Probably not. Philosophers have been debating it for centuries.
Exactly. But this chapter gives us some new ways to think about it.
Okay, so where do we even start with free will? I'm already feeling lost.
One helpful way is to think about awareness. Just because a decision starts unconsciously, down in the brain's wiring, doesn't mean it's totally out of our control.
So even if there's stuff going on we don't see,
there's still room for our conscious minds
to step in.
Yeah, like our awareness might not start the process, but it can shape it.
So like we're not just passengers?
Right, more like imagine a sculptor with clay. The clay's already there, the material.
The artist shapes it.
Exactly. Molds it, refines it, makes it into what they want.
So we're not at the mercy of our brain's every whim.
No, the book really stresses that. We have conscious control.
Even if it's not always starting the action.
Exactly.
So like even if my brain's pushing me towards something,
you can still stop.
Hit the brakes.
Yep, that veto power.
And that's what makes us different from animals that just go on instinct.
It's not just reacting, it's choosing how we react.
Makes me think of habits. Those are like automatic, right?
They are, but we can break them.
We could decide to change.
That's exactly it. That ability to think about what we do, decide what's important to us, and choose actions that match our goals.
That's powerful stuff.
It is, and that's where free will gets so interesting.
Okay, but still, if all our choices are affected by our past, our genes, all that...
the unconscious influences?
Are we really responsible then?
That's the age-old question, isn't it?
Nature versus nurture. Are we fated or free?
And there's no easy answer.
Nope. The book doesn't claim to have one either.
It's more about seeing how complex it all is.
So not a yes or no thing.
Right, more like a spectrum.
How much is us choosing? How much is everything else?
All those factors, they all interact.
Genes, experiences, everything.
So we're not puppets, but we're not totally free agents either.
Somewhere in between.
And that in between, that's what makes us who we are.
We're always changing.
Shaped by nature and by what happens to us.
So even without complete free will...
we still have some agency.
We can still make choices that shape our lives.
Exactly. And that's a pretty empowering idea.
It is. Even if we can't control everything.
We can control how we respond.
Take responsibility for what we do.
It makes a difference, and it makes me think about learning and growing.
We can't change the past, but...
we can learn from it.
Use what we've been through to make better choices.
Every choice is a chance to learn, to adapt.
And to grow.
Exactly. And that's what makes studying human behavior so fascinating, isn't it?
It really is. This whole deep dive has been mind-blowing.
We've learned a lot.
From neurons to dopamine, the hypothalamus, all of it.
So much going on in our brains.
Even for a simple decision.
It's a whole network, all working together.
It's like a universe inside our heads.
And even though we may never completely understand it...
or solve the mystery of free will. For sure.
The journey of exploring it.
That's what matters.
I think that's a great point to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, that sense of wonder.
About what our minds can do.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into decision-making. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
And until next time, keep those brains